So I guess we're gonna have 2 videos tonight, part 2, because I wasn't quite done yet. So I might as well do it now. There's some kind of memory and time. I think it's like 25 minutes to run out. So let's go to part 2. Anyways, I'm trying to remember what I was talking about. So yeah. Yes. Are people getting, stupider? Is it harder for me to remember things now that I have the computer to do it all for me, or Google? Yeah, totally. Of course, I can admit that. But have I also become more intelligent and better able to use the computer, the information, to do more advanced, complex thought processes that was previously being filled by having to remember simple things? Yes, of course. The removal of a lot of this other information that I might normally have to remember or keep in a book, but now I can instantly search it online, leaves more room in my brain to think more deeply about it, to put these different pieces into more complex and more complicated infrastructures. And that's the thing. That is the thing. We finally have the ability to question instantly. I can go at any time. I mean, for Pete's sakes, there's smartwatches, there's smartphones, iPads. At any given point in any day, okay, I can know everything about, at least everything within reason that's in the internet. A lot of the information is also kept private and other things, but let's just assume for the public domain of the internet, anyone around the world with an internet connection via satellite or through a computer, anywhere all over the world, as long as they also have electricity, can instantly know everything that anyone else could ever possibly know. I have access to every single academic journal, I have access to every single book ever written, every single video ever made, every single speech ever presented, every single historical event. I can instantly look at any kind of physics, mathematics, economics, computation, biology, chemistry, English, the arts, law, business, everything that goes into it. Anything I want to know, I instantly know it, and it's mine. I can have it, it's me, it's all for me. I can consume it, I can have all of it, and I am great. I'm a mastermind at it. I'm a whiz. And so because of that, as a millennial, I grew up with that. I grew up having the computer. I grew up having the internet. I grew up having the ability to have the world handed to me on this digital silver platter. No one else has ever had that before. The best you had was that you were in the royal family member and you're a prince and you had the best educator. You had, let's not take a look at the royal family. Let's take a look at Plato. Let's take a look at Aristotle. Let's take a look at Alexander, and we take a look at the Greeks, and we take a look at their schools of thought and their philosophy, which I personally think that they had a lot of stuff right. I mean, think about it. If you build a society where everyone just thinks all day, they're probably going to have a few things. They're probably going to know things. They're probably going to be good at knowing things and explaining things and educating people. But the only way that you could really know something in society is you had people go and get information for you. Get me this, get me that. You, sir, go find the age of the earth. You, sir, go find me, how far away Turkey is. You, sir, you go find me, you go find this other form of information. That was the best you had. You had to be royal to get any kind of decent information of data across the land, or data that questioned what was currently being discussed or thought about in that city or that village or that society or that specific country. That's not the case anymore. Anyone can go do that. Anyone can go to the library. Anyone can go pick up, go to any kind of store. I'm talking even someone who is of the lowest of lowest incomes. The ease and ability and access to information is so cheap now. And it's not just certain pieces of information, it's everything. It's the whole thing. It's instant. My parents didn't have that. Your parents didn't have that. People were constrained. People's minds were constrained. I think that's a little bit more important to go there. people's thoughts were constrained. Your ability to think and understand something and to get information and access to your mind, your consciousness, was not fulfilled. You were constrained. You had to write something on a typewriter. If you screwed it up, you had to roll it back, use whiteout, and you had to rewrite it. And I did that once for a report. My parents had a typewriter. It was one of the best life lessons I've ever had, because I've never complained about writing another report again. I had to write a report once on a typewriter, and it was the most miserable thing I've ever done in my life. But it was a really important lesson because it made me more appreciative of computers. Go figure, I program computers now. But that's the difference, is that every single human being, except for specific, very, very few and lucky, royal and wealthy individuals, a few families, but for the most part, the very average, most men and women, their minds were constrained to their availability, or should I say inability, to access of information and access to expand and question one's thought, including your own or that of another. One's ability to say, you know what, I don't think that book is that right. Or you know what, I don't think the Earth is really that old because we have satellites rotating around the Earth and we're able to study geographic formations on other planets. No one had that ability to do that. They certainly didn't have any information when they were writing religious texts. And I think people really forget that. And I think that is probably one of the most defining characteristics between a millennial and someone who's not, is that a millennial grew up with the expectation of fulfilling the mind. It was an expectation to have, it is an expectation now, to have your entire human curiosity instantly fulfilled, instantly available at the whim of your fingertips. And I think that's probably the biggest reason why when people talk about millennials, or someone writes an article about our expectations or our demands in a job, or what we expect out of an employer, what we expect out of a partner, what we expect out of everything else, is because we grew up with, and yet unbeknownst to us because we're young, we really don't know what it was like 100 years ago. We have no perspective on that. We only know that everything is available to us. Okay? We grew up with the expectation of having the world given to us, having the world handed to us. And we can't even imagine, or we have no idea what it was like to live in a world where there wasn't the world. It was just the West Coast. It was just the East. It was just the Midwest. Or it was just Northern Europe, or it was just the Near East, or it was just Southern Mediterranean, or it was just India, or it was just China, or it was just, it was just the outback, or it was just, the Andes, or it was just, the Caribbean. That was the world was not connected. People were not connected, and now that's not the case, and that will likely never be the case again. Everyone from here on out, and the millennial generation is the first generation, and that's why it's so powerful and humbling to think about it, that we're really the first generation where the expectation, well, I don't say that, we're really the first generation where we're born with the world. We're given the world at birth. And that and everyone is born with the world given to them. And when you think of having anything less than that, it just triggers in your mind, and you just, you get frustrated. And that's the one thing. When millennials complain, that really bugs me. Because I think part of it is because I grew up with really old parents, and complaining was no, shut up. Like, you don't never complain. You know, if there's something that you don't like in your life, you need to go out, you need to go do something about it, you need to go fix it, you need to go apply yourself. And I think over time, that perspective of not having the world at your fingertips, not having everything at your literal command of your brain. I think this. I think I want to know how old the Earth is. I search it. I think I want to know when the United States got founded. I search it. I think I want to know when the wheel was created. I'll go search it. I think I want to know what calculus is. I'll go search it. I think I want to know which employer pays the most. I'm going to go search this. I want to know which employer is going to give me the most benefits. I'm going to go search this. And so that's a very, very interesting thought, because no one has ever really had that ability before, except now. But to have that at birth, to not have that perspective, that's the line. We don't have the perspective of not having everything at our fingertips. And that's just a characteristic. There's nothing wrong. I don't think there's any faults with that. I didn't choose to be born when I was born. I didn't choose that, neither did my parents. My parents didn't choose when they were going to be born. No one chooses when they're going to enter this world. Themselves. It's just thrown on you. So it's not our fault in that sense. But although it's not our fault, like any generation, like any person, like any civilization, it is our responsibility to use it for good, and to use it for the benefit of each other, and for the benefit of mankind and everyone on this earth, and eventually Mars and wherever else we live on. And I'm quite hopeful of the person. I'm not someone who, you know, I'm someone who, generally speaking, I think the Earth is going to be just fine in 200 years. I think the world will be problems. Sure, of course. Are there going to be wars? Yeah, but we're still going to be here. And after every Great Depression, every war ends. Period. And there will be a better day. And I think we're living in some of the greatest days ever, because we still have people alive. And that's the thing. 300 years from now, yeah, will technology be even better? Yes. Will wealth and abundance likely be even more available to more people? Yes, of course, especially if the problem of energy is solved, in which the cost of energy for keeping your home lit, driving your car is ran down as practically zero. That's a different discussion. I do think that the problem of poverty and that will be much better, I don't want to say solved or cured, but much more managed and reduced to a much smaller percentage. So will everything technically, on a technical level, be better? Yes, of course. It'll be very easy to go to space. That's where your kids are going to have field trips. Your kid's next field trip in 100 or 200 years is going to be space. It's not going to be the zoo. It's going to be space. It's going to be looking at the moon, looking at Earth. That's their next field trip. That's awesome. To go, that'd be cool to go, if you take your kid to the local spaceport and you pop them up, because it only takes a few minutes to get to space, less than 10 minutes depending on the rocket you're on. They go up to space, they float around, oh cool, they take pictures and their GoPro or whatever, and then you pick them up at 5 p.m. They just went to space. That's going to be that is I'm not going to say less than 100 years, but in a few hundred years, that's going to be the norm. That's going to be the standard for your kid's field trip, not the zoo. Except you'll probably go to the zoo, but it will be a space zoo. And the animals will just float or something. I don't know how that's going to work. They probably won't float. There'll probably be some spinning thing or some creation of a gravity field that keeps them grounded. But that's the next field trip. That's an awesome field trip. To learn that much about the Earth instantly before you're 10 years old in one field trip. That's a good thing. Information is a good thing. Knowledge is a good thing. Ability is a good thing. Having wealth is a good thing as long as everything is good as long as you use it for the betterment of mankind, as long as you use it for good. Everything is just a tool. Anything is just a tool, and it's the person who wields it and what they do with it that defines them, not them having it. And that's what we need to keep in perspective. And I will say, as a millennial, I do think that, yes, will things technologically be better? Sure. But everyone will be dead. I will be dead, my parents will be dead, my grandparents will be dead, and we as a species will have lost having someone to ask, or having someone to remind us what it once was like before then, before we had this. We will lose that perspective unless we document it, unless we record it, unless we teach it to every generation of what was it like before we were disconnected from each other, or when we were disconnected from each other geographically, when one country really was just a country, separated by a mountain or a river or an ocean, and now it's irrelevant. That's what it's like being a millennial. And I feel very humbled and fortunate that I still have parents and aunts and uncles and family members that can tell me what it was like, to add perspective. And I think it's an opportunity to take advantage of that, and to record things like this, conversations like this, to write books about it. Because someday we won't have that, and then once that day comes, we'll never have it again. Now granted, it is all relative. We can also talk about the invention of the book, the invention of paper, the invention of ink. That was a huge fundamental leap. Probably quite similar to like it is now, in terms of information and the ability for us to apply basic mathematics to optimize the output of a field for grain, or how to use this water resource most optimally, or how do we get the most out of this domesticated animal so we can live and not die. And then you also have to ask yourself, what was the jump like when we had the first phonetic language? Or just language in general. You take a look at hieroglyphics. And in verbal communication, it was in a form that could really transcend ideas. That's the kind of leap we're in. And that's the one thing I do want to mention. I'm not saying like this is the big leap. We've had many big leaps, except they take thousands of years before the next one happens. But I do think this is one of the biggest big leaps, because we're talking about something that fundamentally captures and takes our brains, our actual consciousness, and it transcends all barriers. Yes, we could speak a language, so that now transcended the barrier of local distance. But you can't talk from Germany to France. Your vocal, the sound wave won't travel that far. The energy will dissipate. You can't. A book is only as good as the reason you can ship it. You can only have a book go so far. You can only have so many copies distributed and saturated through so far of the land. There's always going to be pockets. But the internet, the idea of the hive mind, the idea of one connected knowledge base that everyone is given to at birth, no matter where they live, who they are, what they are, how much money they have, how much money they don't have. I think that's probably one of the biggest leaps. History will tell us. 10,000 years, 100,000 years, we'll have a much better understanding of whatever the heck I'm talking about right now. Maybe. Certainly in terms of historical data that we can use to compare and prove or disprove or quantify. But it's an amazing time to live in. And it's a time to enjoy. It's a thing to remember. And is there problems in the world? Of course, there's always going to be problems. But how we approach those problems is what will define us as a species. How we utilize these technologies for the good or for the better or for the worse. That's what will define us, not the technologies. And so that's the biggest call that millennials have is, you've been gifted the world. What are you going to do with it? And I am personally of the opinion, I'm biased, but I think millennials will do just fine. I'm not worried. I'm not worried at all. But we'll see. I might be wrong. We'll have to wait. You know. Anyways, that's it. That's part 2. That was a long video. As you can tell, if I'm not talking every day, I get a lot of stuff packed in here. And it's 40 minutes, maybe. I don't know. That's what the clock looks like. Just since I started talking, so geez, you know, I gotta, you know, I'm kind of like Harry Potter, right? You know, I love the movies Harry Potter. I love Dumbledore, and he's the headmaster guy, right? All those Harry Potter guys or nerds on YouTube are like, oh my god, you don't even know who the headmaster is? Oh my god, it's totally or whatever. I was like, dude, I don't have the internet in me right now. I have the internet right there, but I don't have it right now. I'm not you right now. I'm sitting here. I'm going back. Okay, I'm going back to what it was like to talk in front of a camera without the computer next to me. This is what it was like to be a news reporter in the 60s. Not really. The camera was huge and you know, the booms. That's what I like about these videos. That's why I have the chair here. I don't have any technology. I don't have any resources. All I have is this and my voice, my ideas in my hands, and it's just this. And I love going back and doing that because that's how you learn and gain perspective. But Dumbledore, anyways, he has this thing and it swirls around, and he has this one, and he like sticks his memory out, and it's just this strand of life, and he puts it in this pool, and it just lives forever outside of his brain. That's how I feel when I have these videos. I don't really ever remember what I talk about. Like, I have to go back to my website or to the YouTube channel. What the heck I talk about last time? Because as soon as I do this, it's gone. It's out of my brain, and I can start. New ideas can accumulate, and I gotta offload it soon again, maybe next week. So if I don't do this every day, expect some big lumps every once in a while. Which maybe that's a good thing. I don't know what you like. I don't know what you don't like. I'm just gonna do whatever works. Yeah. And see you guys next week. Have a good weekend. Enjoy thy life, and see ya.